Welcome back, Steeler fans. Today we're answering your mailbag questions. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Also, don't forget to ring that notification bell. That way you're notified of all of our daily segments and weekly lives. I've been told here recently that some folks haven't been getting notification of the shows coming out. If that ends up being you, try unringing the bell and then ringing it back. I heard that works well and gets you back to being notified. With that being said, guys, I'm Daniel J. This is State of the Steelers, and welcome to the Huddle. So, like I said, today we're going to be previewing and answering your mailbag questions. We put out in the community post yesterday, we put out a post stating, ask your questions will be answered today. I'm sorry, it was on Wednesday, not yesterday. And we also put that on Twitter. So when you're watching this for the first time, if you're watching this for the first time and you want to know how do you get your questions answered, every Wednesday in the community post, I put in there a post with a picture of myself holding or next to a mailbags. And in there in the comment section, you ask your questions. I'll be recording these Thursday night, and this will be airing on Fridays. And so you have the opportunity of doing it there and also on my Twitter. There will be a post there as well. You can just put in the reply to that or comment there, your question mark, and it'll be answered here. So let's get into your questions. The first one comes from Steelers fan. Do you feel like Mason has what it takes to get the next win? What do you hope to see from him? I'll say this, you're going up against a team that is on the rise in the Carolina Panthers, and this is if Mason Rudolph ends up playing, right? I think that if Kenny Pickett is healthy and is cleared, I think he's probably going to be the starter. A lot of folks, or not a lot of folks, but everybody knows that practice is a guide for Mike Tomlin when it comes to, the possibilities of a player who's been injured playing. If Kenny Pickett ends up being clear, that would have meant that he had two full practices, and he would have had those practices under his belt, and in my opinion, he'd be cleared. If that ends up being the case, then he should be good to go, and I anticipate seeing Kenny Pickett starting this game. If not, and Mason Rudolph ends up finding himself in this game, I think what he has to do to win this game is just do what Mitch Trubisky didn't, and is, protect the football. Don't throw any interceptions. I think that when you look at the three quarterbacks, Mason, Mitch, and Kenny, up to this point, I think that in NFL games, we can say that probably Mason is probably the best deep thrower of the ball accurately and whatnot. It'd be good to see a different side of this offense, see somebody that's going to attack with accuracy. Now, he hasn't played in a while, so I can't expect him to go in here and light up anything. He's never been the quarterback to light up anything to begin with. And so, he's going to be a little bit rusty. I think as long as he protects the ball, doesn't make those dumb mistakes, I think this defense is strong enough to pull out the victory and move forward with this game until Kenny Pickett's ready to come back and we can continue his development. But what I'm wanting to see from him is some chances down the field and some, protecting the ball at the same time. Take those calculated chances and not make those dumb mistakes that Mitch was making. I know Mason also has a tendency of staring down his receivers, so that's going to be something that I also want to see him break away from. And so it'd be interesting and exciting to see him since, we haven't really seen him play in any meaningful games this year. And, he was going into this season, was the most experienced with the team, the offense, and the players surrounding in this offense. And so I'd be excited to see if, that progression continued from last year. Also, you have folks like Diontae Johnson coming up and, holding his back and saying that he would like to have him play. There's no secret that there was a little bit of an argument or disagreement between Diontae Johnson and Mitch Trubisky earlier on in this season that some say led to Mitch Trubisky's benching. And so, Mason's been there a while. Diontae Johnson has been there, in 2019 was his rookie year. He got to get familiar with Mason. So I'd like to see Mason play if Kenny Pickett can't go, and I think he does have what it takes to get the W. Thank you. Great question. Another one from Steelers Nation Australia. Good old Marky D says, will any Steelers go to the Pro Bowl? I think that we'll have – that's a good question. I don't think anybody's going to go offensively, special teams either. I think this season it's going to be Minka Fitzpatrick, and I would hope Alex Highsmith, but he's kind of not been the same or hasn't had that impact that he did early on in the season here recently. TJ Watt may be a guy who's back, healthy and whose name's going to be in there in the running for it. And because of his name and what he's done in the league recently, we can probably say that maybe he's a third guy, but I'm thinking Minka Fitzpatrick might be the only for sure guarantee guy in there. But I'm thinking that Alex Highsmith has an opportunity. Great question, Mark. Thank you so much. The truth is out there. What is the biggest hole in the team you think can be fixed with the current players on the team? That's a good question. Well, right now, I think that the biggest hole is the defensive running game. You really can't, it's been really poor. And I think that the middle linebacker position has been absolute poor. I think Miles Jack did well earlier on this season, but I think he's kind of, the injuries have kind of gotten to him. It's starting to affect his play. Devin Bush has had a up and down season, mostly stagnant, in my opinion, kind of normal, not living up to the expectation of a first round middle linebacker or even a starting linebacker. Here recently against the run, it's like he's avoiding contact with the runner. And, I think that perhaps the Steelers have a guy in Mark Robinson behind them that they haven't showcased whatsoever. He was a physical guy, wasn't afraid of contact, was a former running back himself. So seeing those running lanes and knowing more and less what the running back could or potentially would be seeing, that gives him an advantage as well. And so I think that, looking into this offseason, those are some holes that I think the Steelers need to address in the draft and or in free agency. But this season, if we're going to try to just put maybe a plug there, I think you got to give the rookie a chance. You drafted him. He was a project. I understand those things. But, there's only 4 games left into this season. He's developed this entire time. He's got time to learn this defense and be a part of it. Let's see what he got. I mean, honestly, how much worse can he get? Last question from Jennifer Prusier. She says, do you think with as banged up as TJ Watt is, should we let him heal and get ready for next season? Or do you think that would signal throwing in the towel and hurt the play of others? Great question. Great question. I think that you have to look at the long-term health of TJ Watt, and you have to do it strategically. Right now, at this point, at this venture, the Steelers still have an opportunity to make the playoffs. And I think that they're not going to throw in the towel up until after there is no purpose behind it. Once there's no playoff implications or anything like that, no hope whatsoever. I think at that point, you really got to consider shutting down Watt and letting him heal. He's clearly not 100%. And the worst thing that could happen is his injury become a significant injury, the pec especially, and that linger on into next season. But as long as there's an opportunity for this team to make playoff potential, I mean, as small as the percentage is, and I'm not saying that the Steelers are going to do it. I'm not even sure the Steelers can get in, even if they win every game out, which is going to be a tall task for this team who's only won 2 games in a row once this season. And so I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think you throw in the towel until you're mathematically out of there, or you're depending on ties. Once that's the situation where it's like, oh, you need this team to get a tie and that team to get a tie, I think at that point you consider shutting him down and have him ready for next season. It's not tanking, it's just being smart with your players. I mean, you think back a couple years ago, the Vikings, and I'm sorry, not the Vikings, it was the Tennessee Titans had sat Henry, their running back, for a game because they were anticipating and using him more in the preseason. In the postseason. And so, this would be looking into next season. However, but you really don't want anything significant to happen at the end of this season and then it linger on into next season. It's that it would be bad. And so, but if he's healthy, and he's not endangering himself of injuring himself further, I say even if the season's over, you have him out there. You show that you're not throwing in the towel. My thing is, if he's banged up and there's no playoff implications here, I would sit him. But if he's healthy and he's ready to go and he can play, if any of these players can play, I'm not saying to shut down anyone. I've seen a couple of things where, hey, let's shut down Kenny Pickett. He's the franchise. He's the future. One, he's very young. He hasn't really he needs some developing. Taking time away from him off the field, I think, would hinder him at this point. He's got some experience. He's got, those things under his belt at this point. He needs to continue to develop and grow with this team. I'm not on that market. Now, this week, if Kenny Pickett, or let's just put it this way, let's put myself in like one of the situations that Mike Tomlin spoke about earlier. If Kenny Pickett was, he was talking about Ryan Clark, and he put Ryan Clark in a position of if Tomlin was his father. If I was Kenny Pickett's father, I don't think he'd be playing this week just because of the 2 concussions in 8 weeks. That's concerning. That is. And so, in my opinion, if they're healthy, they're going to go in, and there's, they're adults and they can make that decision for themselves. But if they're banged up and they're not healthy, then I would say sit them. But that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know in the comment section if you enjoyed this. Don't forget, next week on Wednesday, keep an eye out on the community tab. That's where we'll be putting out the mailbag section, so that way you guys can answer or ask your questions. With that being said, guys, I'm Daniel J. This is State of the Steelers. Peace.